Hey everyone, welcome to the PCS-Proof Podcast, where we're covering the vital things you need to know to thrive in every season of military life. I'm your host and milspouse fitness expert, Grace Barnick-Damazo, and I encourage you to join me each week as we dive deep into topics like fitness, wellness, and entrepreneurship as a military spouse so that you can maintain your own sense of identity and purpose, conquering every transition with strength and resilience. As we journey together, you can expect uplifting conversations and insights. We'll share some laughs, and you can count on me to keep it real so that together we can become truly PCS-proof. Now let's get into it. Welcome back. It's so nice to be chatting with you again this week. And it's been so wonderful hearing from all of you that even in just these first few episodes that they've already been helpful for you and made you feel not quite so alone in this crazy lifestyle. That's really what I envisioned when I thought about starting this podcast. So thank you so much for listening. I love hearing all of your messages, and it just makes me feel really excited and encouraged to keep coming back week after week and share more insights about how to overcome the unique obstacles that we experience in this military life. And this week is no exception. I actually had another topic planned for this week, but the topic that we're going to be diving into today has been coming up a lot with my coaching clients recently. In fact, I just got off of an amazing call with one of my wonderful private coaching clients, and we were talking about a lot of the things that we're actually going to be covering today. So that just really shows how important and how pertinent this is to our community. And I didn't want it to have to wait. So I threw a little audible in order to get this out there for you in hopes that you can start to apply it in your life today, right now. Can you guess what we're going to be talking about? That's right. You guessed it. Just kidding. I have no idea what you guessed, but if you said shame, then you're exactly right. Today we're going to be talking about the number one thing that I see that's holding back women in military life from achieving their goals and thriving, and that is shame. In my opinion, nearly every single person experiences shame in some way in their life, but what makes military spouses and women in military life experience shame differently is that we are having to deal with it from multiple directions. So on top of normal comparisons that we're familiar with nowadays with social media and just general the pervasiveness of comparing ourselves to celebrities and influencers, all of that. Military spouses are having to manage a unique list of comparisons that might make it harder, not impossible, just harder, to pursue all kinds of pursuits, and that makes us compare even more. So we have more challenges to pursuing higher education, more challenges in regards to career growth, financial independence, maybe it's parenting or relationship milestones. The list really goes on. And this could manifest itself, this comparing ourselves to the rest of the world could manifest itself in feelings of inadequacy regarding our own accomplishments or the time frame for achieving things, right? And then we have these ideas and images in our head of what we're supposed to be as a military spouse. And we have these competing ideas and images of what we're supposed to be as a woman in non-military life on top of being a military spouse. So this can really lead us and set us up for feelings of being not good enough in multiple areas of our lives. And then additionally, social support and close connections to others are a really effective buffer for shame and feelings of inadequacy. And due to the transient nature of military life, we can experience more frequent periods of isolation and loneliness, which makes us more susceptible to those shame feelings. So you can see these multiple levels and layers that we are dealing with that can obviously exacerbate feelings of shame and hold us back. So today we're going to be tackling 3 essential questions surrounding shame and how it's holding you back from finding the solutions that are going to catapult you into the fulfilling life that you dream of. So question 1 is, what is shame and how can I identify it in my life? So it's like a 2-parter, but they go hand in hand. What's shame and how is it showing up in my life? How can I identify it? Question 2, what do I do when shame is causing me to self-sabotage? Self-sabotage comes as a direct effect of feelings of shame. So what are we doing to self-sabotage? And then how do I get over that? And then question 3, how do I start to overcome shame so that I can take back ownership of my journey? So that's really the most important takeaway that I want. First, we need to know what it is, how is it impacting my life, what are my MOs, but then most importantly, how do I start to overcome shame so that I can start to take back ownership? I know this is a really big topic, so let's all just take one big deep breath together. All right, are you ready to dive in? So I wanted to quickly just shed some light on how pervasive the impact of shame is on women in military life. And yeah, I'm very, very fully aware that this is not exactly a feel-good topic. As I mentioned, though, this is the number one thing that I see holding women back. So I hope that you're willing to dig deep and go into this with me. I guarantee that if you make the decision not to skip this episode and not to ignore these kind of icky feelings, that the impact that it will have on your ability to not hold yourself back from living the happy, healthy, thriving life that you've been wanting, you will walk away from this episode feeling so much more confident in your ability to take back control of your journey. And that's why I'm not shying away from this topic. It's that important. So let's dive in. About a month ago, I was listening to a podcast episode on another show, and I heard this soundbite that just hit me so hard. And I have to give credit where credit's due. The person who gave this soundbite is a woman by the name of Tiffany Aliche, aka the Budgetnista. Maybe you've heard of her. Tiffany is a personal finance expert, and she was talking about how money is a big source of shame for people. It's something that typically is hard for people to talk about. It's stressful. And maybe just as we're like touching on this topic of money and personal finances right now, you might be feeling a little bit more tense and like a little bit of ick, right? But then she said it, and I just kept rewinding and re-listening to her say this phrase multiple times because it was just so perfect. She said, shame shields solutions. How great is that? Shame shields solutions. And yeah, she was talking about this in regards to money and personal finances, but it is 100% applicable to any part of our lives that we're struggling with, right? Maybe we're feeling ashamed to tell our partner that there was this one part of our relationship that's just not working. And by not saying anything and not addressing it, nothing gets solved. And maybe we have a resume that's 5 pages long because we've been PCSing every 2 to 3 years for the past decade plus. And we're starting to feel like we're unworthy of career success. So why even put ourselves out there? Why even try? Or maybe we tried out the new fad diet that everyone's working on, and maybe it's like something like, I don't know, like a 75 hard or some other intense exercise program, but we never finished it because life got in the way, or maybe we weren't seeing results like those other girls. And now we're telling ourselves the story that nothing will work for us to get in shape. It's not meant for us. It's for them, not us. We're not worthy. Or here's another one. And I really blame reality fat loss shows and heavily photoshopped social media posts for this. But maybe we're working really hard, staying super consistent in the gym, and we're eating healthy, balanced meals, but we're not seeing the results as quickly as maybe we would have wanted, or maybe what we're told, quote unquote, that we should be getting them in this time frame. And we're starting to feel like maybe we're doing something wrong. We must be the ones that are wrong, not that unrealistic timeline. It's us. And maybe that causes us to give up altogether. These are real things. Maybe you can relate to some of them. Maybe it just sparks something else that's going on in your life that's similar to these. But these are all ways that shame shows up in our lives. Shame is the underlying threat to accessing real solutions to overcome obstacles on the journey to our desired destination. Let me say that one more time. Shame is the underlying threat to accessing real solutions to overcoming obstacles in the journey to our desired destination. So you can see how important this is. So let's take a moment to understand what shame is and how we can identify it in our own lives. Shame is defined as a deep-seated feeling of unworthiness or inadequacy, often stemming from internalized beliefs about one's shortcomings or failures. And I just want to take a quick moment right off the bat to differentiate shame from guilt, because I often hear this from clients that they feel guilty about doing or not doing something for themselves. Guilt actually arises from a specific behavior or specific action. Shame pertains to one's self-identity, one's sense of self. So shame focuses on the I am bad, on the self, while guilt focuses on the I did something bad, the behavior. So just wanted to make sure we clarified those two things. And in military life, shame can show up in many ways. Things like comparison to peers, feeling inadequate or inferior to comparing to others' achievements or other people's capabilities. It can show up as failure to meet expectations, both within military life or in comparison to our friends from high school or from college. Again, these are those multiple layers that we have to deal with that a lot of people do not. It can also show up as feeling like an outsider, maybe struggling with belonging or identity within the military culture, leading to feelings of isolation and shame. Maybe we feel like an outsider due to factors like race or gender or rank, whether it's yours or your spouse's. And hey, I know that we all like to try and pretend that last one isn't true, but you and I both know that it still happens sometimes. So I promise to keep it real. I'm going to just go ahead and say it there. Sometimes that happens. And shame might also show up as imposter syndrome, that feeling that you need to downplay your own accomplishments because you're doubting that you actually earned it or you deserve it. And this can negatively affect your ability to succeed because shame has a direct impact on your self-esteem, on your confidence, and motivation. Shame can often lead to avoidance behaviors, fear of failure, reluctance to take risks, and we start to hold ourselves back from personal growth and professional growth because of that self-doubt. And it can lead to perfectionistic tendencies which hold us back, thinking that if we avoid or wait for the perfect time, that it will all work out. But unless we actually address the underlying cause, aka shame, it's going to continue to shield solutions and continue to hold us back from the thriving life that we deserve. And that's the key takeaway that I would like you to hear. If you get nothing else from this podcast episode, it's that if you address shame, you can start to find solutions to obstacles that are holding you back. Okay, so that's what I really want you to take away from this not so fun topic, but I'm so glad that you're here and we're talking about this so that we can start to move forward. But what happens if we choose to turn off this episode and go about our lives or just ignore that this is happening? What happens if we don't address the underlying shame? Very often, ignoring or not being aware of it will lead to engaging in behaviors that undermine our own progress toward a certain goal or even toward our own well-being. We're talking about self-sabotage. Self-sabotage can show up as behaviors like procrastination, imposter syndrome, avoidance of challenges. So procrastination is like delaying tasks or responsibilities, and this is often out of a fear of failure or perfectionism, waiting for everything to be perfect. Imposter syndrome is the feeling of unworthiness of success or attributing achievements to luck rather than on one's own hard work and abilities. Avoidance of challenges is shying away from opportunities for growth or advancement because of fear of rejection or fear of criticism. So that's what self-sabotage can end up showing up like. And the underlying causes of self-sabotage come from many different reasons. Things like a fear of failure, low self-esteem. Sometimes it shows up in maladaptive coping mechanisms like substance abuse or overeating, which kind of are like an escape from the discomfort or the stress that shame is causing, right? So fear of failure is that anxiety about not meeting expectations or disappointing others. We don't want to disappoint others, and that leads to avoidance of risk-taking or avoidance of pursuing a goal that's important to us. Low self-esteem is those feelings of unworthiness or inadequacy that are starting to show up, and they undermine our confidence and they undermine our ability to take initiative. So that's really how the behaviors that are coming from that self-sabotage that are ultimately coming from shame around some kind of comparison of ourselves to ourselves or ourselves to others. In order to prevent that self-sabotage in the future, it's really important that we have some awareness around our own MO when things get tough, so that we can, those things are causing us to exhibit some of the behaviors that we talked about above. So it's important that we reflect on our past experiences, on places that we may have already self-sabotaged, maybe in your career or in your own fitness journey, and then try and identify some common patterns or some common triggers that are causing self-sabotaging behaviors. And I want you to try really hard not to beat yourself up on things that happened in the past. You did your best to cope with a challenge in a way that felt comfortable and safe at that time. So you were coping. Understandable. Please try and give yourself like a little bit of grace for that. But now you want something different. So we need to do something different in order to move forward. We're going to take ownership of that and take steps to do something different in the future. And how empowering is it to know that we actually have choice? We can actively choose to do things differently for ourselves. We don't have to keep self-sabotaging. We can do something different. And that's pretty amazing, right? That's pretty motivating to me. So now, once we've recognized patterns and past behaviors of self-sabotage, we need to figure out how do we overcome it. One way to do that is to reframe our negative self-talk. So when you start to notice yourself engaging in negative self-talk or self-criticism, I want you to pause for a moment and first just offer yourself some kindness and some understanding instead. Remind yourself that as a woman in military life, you are experiencing challenges that most women will never be faced with. And remind yourself that everyone makes mistakes and experiences setbacks, and that your worth, your worthiness is not determined by your achievements and your failures. So by practicing this self-compassion, we can help to counteract those feelings of shame and inadequacy, and we can start to really grow that feeling and that sense of self-acceptance and of resilience, that it's okay to have these setbacks. I am more resilient. I can switch the channel, change the channel into a more understanding, empathetic place. And I like to think of it like this. What would I tell a really good friend whose well-being I deeply care about? What would I tell them to do in that same situation? I would probably offer some empathy and some grace and understanding, and I would follow that up with some positive affirmations of you are worthy. You are so deserving of that promotion, of love, of taking a risk and finding out if you could succeed in that. You probably will because you're amazing, right? That's what a good friend would tell you. So let's go ahead and start from a place of telling ourselves that as well. And then I want you to just take a quick look at the negative thoughts and beliefs and see if there's any evidence to support those beliefs. Or are they just based on assumptions that we're making about ourselves or about the circumstances, or even like a distortion of the situation. So check the facts that support these stories that we're telling ourselves. Challenge these thoughts by considering alternative perspectives and then reframing them in a more balanced, realistic view. So if you catch yourself thinking, I'm not good enough or I don't deserve it, challenge that belief by acknowledging your strengths and maybe even some past successes that you have succeeded in the past. So why not now? Replacing those negative thoughts with a more affirming statement such as, I am capable, I am deserving of success, can help to just switch that channel from those negative self-thoughts and beliefs into a more realistic, I am pretty successful mindset. And for me, when I started incorporating a gratitude practice, a daily gratitude practice, that was really transformative for how I looked at my life. And yeah, it was really hard at first. And I know it feels very woo-woo, I get it, but there's so much scientific evidence coming out supporting this idea that bringing awareness and redirecting our negative thoughts into something positive or having gratitude around it can start to counteract the negative self-talk and build self-confidence over time. It's like a muscle that you're working. And for me, it was really hard to do a gratitude practice every night. I would do it with my spouse. We would send each other a text message or an email when we were separated. And it really transformed the way my brain was working. The wires of my brain felt like they were changing into a more positive mindset, which was amazing. And another avenue to overcoming shame is to seek out support and connection. So supporting a support from a trusted friend or a mentor or even a mental health professional. I'm a massive proponent of therapy. And I would have to credit therapy for helping me overcome years and years of self-sabotage in my own journey. So I will wholeheartedly support seeking out a mental health professional in addition to a trusted friend, a mentor, your spouse. And I would also encourage you to reach out to individuals and professionals who offer empathy and offer validation and guidance in navigating your shame and self-doubt. So find those people that you can really count on to support you from a place of empathy instead of, like a place of just berating you and telling you shouldn't think that way. We want empathy and validation for these feelings because they're real. If you're looking for professional support, Military One Source is a great place to start off from. And I would recommend going there to see if you can get connected with their therapist. Also, author Brene Brown has several books that discuss the role of shame and how to overcome, and several TED Talks on the internet that we can access. So those are free. Those are available to you. You can look them up right now if you're wanting to explore the topic just a little bit more. But the key takeaway that I'd like you to hear is that by practicing vulnerability, reframing this negative self-talk, and then maybe even seeking some support outside of ourselves, get out of your brain, get some support. These can help you begin to overcome shame and start to cultivate a greater sense of self-acceptance and resilience. Ultimately, this is what will help you make massive positive change in your life. This is what's going to allow you to stop holding yourself back and stop allowing circumstances outside of yourself to hold you back, so that you can achieve the healthy, happy, thriving life that you deserve to have. And if you're still with me and you made it through all of that, you're now probably feeling pretty overwhelmed. I know it's a lot. I told you at the beginning, this is not going to be the most exciting, happy, fun topic to cover, but I hope that you're getting the weight of the importance of the topic. Shame is what's been holding you back. It's been shielding you from the solutions that are actually going to help you move forward and achieve your full potential that you've been holding yourself back from all this time due to feelings of unworthiness, of falling into the traps of comparison or analysis paralysis, or waiting for the perfect time or the perfect circumstances. And those feelings may have been causing you to hide and avoid or engage in self-sabotaging behaviors, or even tell yourself these stories that reaffirm negative feelings and hold you back. So along with starting your journey to unpacking shame, which we talked about already, I wanted to give you some easier action steps that maybe you don't feel quite as daunted and overwhelmed by, and you can start to incorporate these as soon as we finish this episode. So the first one is to set achievable, realistic goals that align with your values. So we talked about this a little bit in episode 2, and feel free to go back and re-listen to that. But I want you to think about breaking down larger goals into more manageable, realistic steps, and that will enhance your motivation and your progress. Think about like a video game where you level up. We don't go straight to the final level. I'm going to date myself when I'm talking about video games, because video games are a little different now, but you don't think about going to the final level where you're trying to beat the big boss at the very end. You start at level 1, and as you build from one level to the next level and you level up, you build skills that you need when you get to that final level and you're facing the big boss, but you probably don't have at the beginning when you're first learning a game. So I want you to think about taking your big goal and breaking it down into small steps that every time you level up, it feels like a win, feels like a positive thing, right? And then the sub piece to this is that I want you to celebrate every single one of those wins, no matter how small it is. We have this tendency in our society that when we do something, we like put an X on the calendar. So if I like went for a run, I'd put like an X on the calendar. But an X is also like a really negative sign. We use X's to tell you to don't go this place, or like we don't want that. X is actually kind of a negative thing. So I want you to maybe just switch it up and start giving yourself a star or a smiley face when you do something, and focus on the positive things. Don't give yourself an X every day you didn't go for a run. Only give yourself a smiley face on the days when you did go for a run. So it ends up being like when you're looking at your calendar, you see all the positives instead of seeing all the negatives. And then there's this power of the high five. So you guys have gone to, sporting event, or you're out doing something and you give your friend a high five or your teammate a high five. There's actually studies that talk about the power of the high five. There's something about, one, the noise, that clap, And then 2, the physical touch that have been shown to elicit positive feelings. And when our brain starts to get wired to those positive feelings, we want more of them. So we can high five a friend or our partner when we do something good, but we could also give ourselves a high five. So I want you guys to also think about maybe utilizing the power of the high fiving. When you do something that you're supposed to do, that you wanted to do, that's going to move you closer to your goals, give yourself a high five. Give yourself a pat on the back. Same thing, that physical touch and noise is going to elicit a positive thing that your brain is going to want more of, and we're going to be more likely, more motivated to do it. The second thing that I wanted to share with you, the second action step, is to embrace your setbacks as a learning opportunity. Shift the perspective on setbacks and failures as opportunities for learning and for growth, rather than a source of more shame and a source of defeat. So this is the concept of resilience, the ability to bounce back from adversity stronger. And this is one, we talked about this before, is that military spouses, we are very resilient and we bounce back from massive challenges. And I want you to start thinking about utilizing that same skill for yourself in this arena, to be able to overcome shame, to reframe the narrative and start telling yourself a more positive, empowering story. And then the third action step is to cultivate that positive mindset and cultivate it through self-affirmations. The power of mindset shifts and positive affirmations in promoting self-belief and empowerment is massive. So I encourage you to cultivate that growth mindset. Think about viewing challenges as opportunities for learning and for personal development, and think about utilizing daily affirmations to reinforce positive self-image, reinforce the positive stories instead of letting the negative stories take over. And that's going to help us to overcome self-doubt. And by setting these achievable goals, realistic goals, by reframing these setbacks as opportunities, and by cultivating that positive mindset, we can really tap into our own power, which will ultimately help us to overcome shame and overcome any obstacles that are preventing us from reaching our full potential. All right, so I have a really personal story for you. It has to do with one of the most embarrassing, shameful experiences in my life, one where shame could have easily sent me in a completely different direction. But first, I need to take a quick break. Make sure you stick around. You won't want to miss this. Hey, fellow milspouse. Ever felt the frustration of being forced to restart your fitness routine every time military life throws you a curveball? Whether it's a PCS, a deployment, or a short-term assignment, disruptions can make progress feel nearly impossible. But now there's a solution designed just for you, the PCS-Proof Fitness Program from FitPath Coaching. Designed by a woman in military life, for women in military life. It's flexible, adaptable, and affordable. No more setbacks or starting over, just steady progress on your terms. Visit fitpathcoaching.com/PCS-proof-fitness to start your journey today. And as a special offer for our podcast listeners, get your first month free with promo code POD4FREE. That's POD, the number 4, FREE. Say goodbye to stress and frustration and hello to a stronger, healthier, happier you with PCS-Proof Fitness. Join us today and get ready to conquer any challenge military life sends your way. PCS-Proof Fitness, join today. So, listener, I have told you that I'll always keep it real with you. So in the interest of being real and being vulnerable, I wanted to share a story with you about the one instance where shame played a massive part, and it made a massive impact on my life, and how I was ultimately able to turn it into an opportunity. I love food. I love to eat. I'm Mexican. We love to eat. I always have. When I was a preteen, I started to put on some weight, started to gain a little bit of weight, and I was getting what you might consider a little chubby. I was eating more than I probably should have been, and probably less active as I was growing up, not playing on the playground as much, normal things. But on top of that, I was hitting puberty and all those changes to my hormones. My body was changing, all of that. I started to gain a little bit of weight. And as most girls, unfortunately, are prone to do, I started comparing myself. I was comparing myself to my classmates and my peers, it all felt like they were all so much skinnier than I was. And while I was fortunate enough not to grow up in the influence of social media, there were still TV shows and movies and magazines and fashion catalogs. And you remember Delia's or Alloy. I know I'm really dating myself with those, but if you were my time frame, you remember those catalogs. And I always wish that I looked as skinny and perfect as those girls in the magazines. And I also happened to be a twin. And I constantly had someone to directly compare myself to. And my twin happens to be much more frail than I am. And this was a really big source of shame for me as a young girl. I definitely remember experiencing those feelings of unworthiness and of inadequacy and why can't I be like all those other girls? Why do I have to be the one that's different? And those are a lot of things that we talked about today, right? And this absolutely prevented me from seeking out solutions. Instead, I hid these feelings. I pretended that I didn't notice or that it didn't bother me. And I started to sneak food. I started hiding when I was eating more food than I knew I should be. And this was specifically around junk food. So like chips, candy, sweets, that kind of stuff. And I had an understanding that I shouldn't be doing this stuff. But again, shame. It was causing me to avoid addressing it. So here's the story. One day I was at home. It was after school, and it was my normal routine to have this after school snack. And in this case, the after school snack was a drumstick ice cream cone. You know, the ones I'm talking about with the chocolate and the nuts on the outside. One of my favorite treats. And what's better than one treat? It's two treats. So after a little while after having the first one, my brain started telling me that I should probably have another. So I snuck out to the garage to indulge in my bonus snack. And right after I started to eat the drumstick, I heard my dad's truck pull into the driveway and he was going to catch me in the garage. So I ran out the back of the garage into the side of the house where I could quickly stuff the rest of the drumstick in my mouth and then throw away the wrapper in the trash so that no one would see it, and then go back into the garage and no one would know. But for whatever reason, this time my dad decided to go in through the side gate to the house instead of going in through the garage. And he caught me. He caught me shoving this ice cream cone into my mouth, and I was so embarrassed. My shame was being exposed, and it was terrifying. I cannot tell you, it still feels like icky just even talking about it decades later. So the cool thing, though, is that even though this was massively terrifying, it ended up being a huge turning point in my life. My dad, who I'm sure had been very aware of the fact that I'd been gaining weight, he never shamed me or made me feel bad about food. Neither of my parents did. But he decided to talk to me about it with empathy. He told me that he had always struggled with eating and struggled with his weight too, and that he didn't want that to be something that I struggled with for my whole life. He wanted me to be healthy, and he offered that we could do it together. So once my shame was exposed and I didn't feel like I was having to carry around all this weight of those emotions on my own. I had a partner, someone outside for support. I was able to take steps forward and find solutions. And also, once that shame was exposed, it also helped kind of reduce that hyperfixation that I was having around food, those loud voices in my head telling me that I needed that extra treat. Those voices started to quiet down. It wasn't as pervasive on my mind. Additionally, I started to play sports, and that made a massive difference. So this is one of the big reasons I'm a huge advocate and supporter of female athletics, young female athletics programs, because it really helped me with my confidence and my body image, and ultimately helped with my relationship with food. And while I did lose a lot of the weight, that is not the point of the story that I want you to take away. And I want you to hear that from me when I say it. It's because this world is so obsessed with weight loss and being skinny, like the fitness models on Instagram. I don't want you to take away from this very vulnerable story that I'm sharing, thinking that Grace, the fitness expert, is telling you that you should work through your shame so you can get skinny. The moral that I'm hoping that you take away from this is that my shame could have prevented me from a lifetime of enjoying food, or a lifetime of missing out on my potential with my athletics career, which has brought me so much confidence and friendships and connection and community. And that has allowed me to travel places I never thought I would go. My shame could have led to a life of unhealthy eating and obesity-related health issues. And the damage to my self-confidence and my self-worth could have hindered my ability to pursue career paths and higher education. And I absolutely would not be here talking to you today, sharing one of my most mortifying moments in my life in an effort to help you live a more fulfilling life. None of that would have happened if I wasn't forced to deal with my own shame. And I'll tell you one more thing. When I was running my first marathon, my husband, who knows this story about me, he greeted me at the finish line with a drumstick. That thing that was once a source of shame for me was now a source of pride and a part of my success, reframing the story, right? So I hope that me sharing a little bit of vulnerability and a little bit of one of my most shameful moments in life, that it helps you. And I hope that you can start to see maybe a glimpse of what could change in your life if you're ready to peel back the layers of this daunting thing called shame. So give yourself a little pat on the back. This is a win today, and a big thank you for being willing to go there with me. You should be very proud of yourself. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the PCS-Proof Podcast. If you have a friend or a family member or maybe a MilSpouse networking group that you feel like could benefit from hearing this, please share it with them. As I mentioned, this is the number one thing that I see holding women back in military life from achieving their goals and thriving. So this is important to get it out there for more women to hear and more women in your life to hear. And if you've not already done so, please follow this podcast and consider leaving a 5-star review for me so that this podcast can get pushed to more women in military life who need to hear it. And with that being said, I hope that you have a great rest of the week. And I hope that you remember that no matter where in the world military life sends us, together we are PCS proof. Adios. And here is the legal language. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional advice. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the host or fitpathcoaching.com. Moreover, we are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast.